Hi, Mitch. You're. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Awesome. Well, that is awesome. Let's say we begin a little bit early.
Okay. What
Awesome.
time?
Well, we still got, essentially, I've got a countdown going, so we've got a minute and a half
All right. We can wait it out.
already. Build the tension.
Sure. It is. Is it quite cold there already?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's been off and on. We've been having days where it really shoots up to 12 or so.
Oh man, today is -5.
-5. Oosh.
So this is the first day that the kids actually. I have three kids. Actually had to wear gear.
Yeah.
They weren't super excited about that.
No.
We've
I
had
mean,
a
it's,
really lovely fall.
yeah, I heard you guys had, it was 22 degrees the other day.
It's been incredible. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
both crazy
But now
and
it's kind of
scary.
like, yeah, it's a little scary, but now we're into it for
Yeah.
real. And I'm from BC, so I'm a bit spoiled. We didn't have real winters growing up, so
Yeah, I lived in Victoria
oh,
for
okay.
a while, and it was bliss.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of miss it, but winter's fun too in its own way.
It can be. I mean, it's a lot
Yeah.
of time for self reflection and staying inside and hobbies, arts and crafts.
Well, and also just wearing the right gear to go out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's worth it when you do get out there.
What is the saying? There's no bad weather, only bad like you're not
Only bad gear.
bad only bad gear.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's so true.
Going live
Alrighty,
in 10, 9.
7, 6, 5.
Mitch, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Are we? Huh? Did it quit out for you?
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's good that we're back on, and it says we're still live, so that's great.
Okay, great.
um, anyways, I was talking about New Society Publishers, and they continue to bring positive solutions and cutting edge ideas to some of the most troubling challenges of our time. They're committed to building an ecologically sustainable and just society, and they walk their talk by printing their books in North America, never overseas, and on 100% post-consumer recycled paper. And they've been carbon neutral since 2006. Their employees are all shareholders, and they are a certified B Corporation. If you want to find out more about New Society and how they put people and the planet first, head on over to newsociety.com. And you are a New Society author.
I am
Awesome. And
a
we're here.
proud New Society author.
Awesome. Yeah, they're really incredible, eh? Just their book
Mhm.
list is so extensive and so wide ranging. I'm so excited to be able to have the opportunity to interview so many people. And you're my first New Society author that I'm actually interviewing.
Really?
So yeah. So
I
thank you.
feel well, it's my pleasure. I have a book. It's right here. Here's a
It's right
book.
there.
Here's the book. One of the things I love about New Society is their commitment to solutions.
Yes.
And that was a great challenge and opportunity for me in my own walk with a sustainable approach to technology when they reached out to me to expand off of some writing I'd already done into this book. um, they challenged me to focus on tools for a new society. What are the
Mhm.
solutions that you could offer? Not focusing in on the problem, but if you're going to talk about the problem, then you need to offer solutions. And so, yeah, I've been incredibly grateful for that. turn in my story thanks to them.
Amazing. And so how did this all get started? So you're writing about this, and what sparked it?
So I am a Canadian. I'm originally from the West Coast, the wet coast. I
Hmm.
studied at Simon Fraser University at the School of Communication, and it was there that I started to hone my, I guess, my critical lens on mass communication and the ways in which communication technologies have shaped people and cultures over, well, most of history. And I was probably an early blogger, I would say, and was pretty cued into the ways in which the internet was sort of exploding in the early 2000s. And I was also pretty honed in on how my relationships with people were changing as email showed up, and then of course social media about 10 years ago. And I had this growing discomfort about the ways in which the internet was sort of taking over my time, and was also shifting the ways that I produced creatively, and also the
Hmm.
ways in which I built relationships. And so I had this idea of giving the internet up for a year and chronicling that experience. In the interim, I'd moved from BC to Toronto, and all my family's back in BC, and they were like, hell no, you may not give up the internet for a
Yeah.
year because we will not see you. We will not have a relationship with you, which is also just like an interesting sort of note that if if you're off the internet, then it's like you don't exist. But side note on that. But it was really this documentary I watched. It was a CBC documentary called Our Crackberry World. And there was a scene in which there was a priest conducting a blessing service for smartphones. And I
Whoa.
just, right. I had, it's okay. So like, let's grab my phone here. And so here's a person dressed, in holy vestments, calling upon the God of the universe to bless, this is an iPhone, but a BlackBerry. And I had this completely visceral reaction. And I started asking these big questions about like, could this thing be blessed? Could this thing be a blessing? And so I did end up giving the internet for just 31 days and chronicling that experience in a little experiment that I called Letters from a Luddite.
Hmm.
And I wrote on an old typewriter, which I actually have back here in my office still, writing about the day-to-day experience of what it was to be completely disconnected from the internet in a time where we basically needed it entirely to socially engage, to creatively engage. Especially if you're a thought leader of any type, you're expected to be in those public spaces online.
Hmm.
And so I published a few essays about that experience, and the wonderful, wonderful people at New Society Publishers read some of those pieces and gave me the best Christmas present I could ever receive, which was an email right before Christmas saying, hey, would you like to expand off of these thoughts into a book? And that's where the joy of missing out came from.
No way.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What what were the most profound things you found that happened um,
Offline.
when you did that fast? I can relate because well, not I didn't do 31 days, but when I lived in New Zealand, I had the opportunity to go to Stewart Island where there was no phone service, and we just lived in the shack for 2 weeks at a time, and I felt so rejuvenated after. And I just when I
Mm.
got back, when I looked at my phone, I didn't need it. It was just just like get it out of my face. How was that for you?
I mean, so many different waves. I'm seeing the lights really coming in right now. Can you still see me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Um, like any detox, like the first couple of days were weird, frustrating. I remember reaching for my phone to do something. I still had my phone to be an actual telephone because I have kids and I wanted it for emergency purposes because we didn't have a landline. And I would reach for it to do something, realize, oh, I can't do that. So there was definitely a couple of days of, getting used to it. But I would say by the third or fourth day, I really settled in, and there were so many things I experienced during that time. The thing I talk the most about is just that my mind felt so incredibly clear.
Hmm.
There were no voices, just trying to grab my attention. I didn't realize how much of that was in the periphery all of the time. Creatively, I did a lot in just that 31-day period, especially when I had really, really small kids, and any parent can attest that those are years where it's very difficult to find, margin to create. And I was writing poetry, and I was writing about this experience, and I just had sort of this like creative flow really unlocked during that time. I also deepened connections with neighbors. So there
Yeah,
was,
you had a really good story
yeah,
in there.
kind of a terrible story, but really good story, where I locked my keys and my baby
Oh God.
in my house, people. This is like sleep deprivation to the max. I went to like take my kids out for a drive, and I in the flurry of things, I left my keys and my delightful sleeping baby in a sleep, whatever. He was asleep. Completely freaked out, didn't have the internet, so couldn't, like look for a locksmith or any of the things. I called my husband, ran down the street to see the one car that was parked in a driveway. Knock, knock, knocked on the door, knock, knock, knocked, just until someone came. And it was Renee. She was a neighbor that we had, we'd smiled at each other and, said hello, but I didn't really know her name. She quickly invited us in, my daughter, my young daughter, and me, and gave my daughter, a juice box and put her in front of, Sesame Street or something, and called a locksmith, and like locksmith was there in 20 minutes. Long story short, got in, baby still asleep, all was well. But it was this incredible experience where I would have turned to Google for help, but I was forced to turn to a neighbor. And that has been so instructive for me since then. It's so easy to turn to the internet for help, for recommendations, for solutions. But it really does cut out the middleman. And so I like to put some friction into my life where I push myself to rely on people instead of tech. So I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about all those different things, but it was an amazing experience.
Absolutely. And before we actually go forward, I just wanted to remind the audience that we are actually giving away one of your books to the most engaged viewer. And at some point during this interview, I will be giving out a coupon code for all viewers that's available for 2 days, and they can use that coupon code for your book. But just going back to that story, you also talked about how the answers never mattered as much as the conversation. And it seems like whenever we're having a discussion with people or an argument, we're so quick to bring up Google and go, okay, well, actually, I'm right. So that's that.
There.
That's
So
the end of
there.
the conversation. That's the end of the discussion. I wonder how many dinner conversations have just been cut short. And I'm just wondering, do you think that we are losing our ability as humans to constructively debate and discuss really controversial topics because we have that access just so readily available?
Yeah, I really do think so. And I do hear of, it seems like younger people seem to be more tuned into the impact of the internet, but I've heard of people, putting their phones in the middle of the dinner table, and the first person to grab it, has to pay for dinner kind of thing,
Yeah.
and forcing themselves to go back and dust out the cobwebs of their memory and pull out these things,
Yeah.
these bits of knowledge. And I think that's incredibly important, because we know with neural pathways, right, the more we use them, the stronger they get. And when then they fall into disuse, right, we begin to lose them. And I think, and also just relationally, what do we get out of great debate? Well, we get meaning and connection, and we discover things that wouldn't just show up in a Wikipedia listing, right,
Yeah.
on our phones. So, yeah, I really do think we are missing out on some important things by always turning to those resources that seem to always be there.
Yeah. And the memory recall you touched on is pretty insidious because we're hinging our memory on these things and we're not actually making those neural connections that distill that information in our brains. And it's so readily available. It's so easy to be an expert in anything.
Are we an expert though?
Exactly. There's just so much contrasting information out there that everyone's an expert in their own thing, but so unwilling to look at other sides of the story, which is, as we can tell in today's political climate, a little bit deconstructive.
Mm-hmm.
And early on in the book, you correlate the insidious and seemingly exponential rise in technology with a seemingly equal rise in mental health issues. And later on in the book, you touch on the early adoption of technology by toddlers and an associated rise in anxiety in this demographic. And do you think that we're perhaps setting them up for a deep failure, given that they're experiencing not only their own anxiety, but also the anxiety that their caregivers and people around them are experiencing as well, just from having these vessels that they can, you know, look at and explore all the time, seemingly. And so, what are your concerns for that?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be interested in hearing, what are your protocols with your 3 children, and what skills are you teaching them in the void of not looking at a screen?
Lots to unpack there. Okay, so
Yeah, sorry, big one.
no, it's really good. Such a great question. So, how did you term it? A deep failure? What was your? How did you
Yeah, so
describe
we're
it?
setting them up for a failure because
Yeah.
um, we say, okay, well, go preoccupy yourself with this. Meanwhile, I'm going to be anxious on my phone, and that you'll ambiently pick up on that,
Yeah.
and also pick up your own anxiety from this utilization of this tool.
I think it is a deep failure because I don't think I'd ever stopped to consider. We often talk about the impact of tech on kids, and we often talk about the impact of tech on individuals. But I love how you brought into the conversation the baseline for parents now or caregivers now,
Mm-hmm.
and the edged up with the kids at the same time. I think we are doing them a huge disservice by pacifying them with tech while we pacify ourselves on Instagram, to kind of like decompress from the pressures. I can't tell you how many people I talk to on a given week that tell me that they go to Instagram just to exhale because it's a grid, it is controlled, it's usually beautiful, and kids are watching their parents and their caregivers do that all the time. On
Mm-hmm.
top of that, kids are just constantly being bombarded with messages. Children are, I just want to go back to a bit of what I wrote about in the book because there's such great research out there about this. So, Helen McGrath, a psychology professor at Deakin University in Melbourne, Australia, claims that children are not as resilient as they once were because we are parenting with happiness instead of independence as our aim. And I know that you're an organization about permaculture and new society with solutions, but a lot of their work is around sustainability, and resilience is an incredibly important piece of that. And when kids are begging, for the next episode of their favorite TV show, or asking for the iPad all the time, and I can tell you that this is experience I have on a day-to-day basis
Yeah.
with my 3 children. Pacifying our kids with screens doesn't build the resilience and self-control we are hoping to instill in them. So with our family, I wish I could just tell you like, here are 5 rules and you can just implement them right now. It's much more fluid than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to explain the philosophy that guides my approach. It comes from a professor named Albert Borgman out of the University of Montana. And actually, the new book I'm working on right now is
Oh, a new one.
exploring a new book,
Cool.
yeah, which we can talk about maybe a little bit later. But my new book is exploring one of his philosophical concepts. But one of the approaches that I love so much from him is that his approach to technology is less about limiting it as it is about creating the positive conditions for other engagements to thrive and flourish.
Mm-hmm.
So to just break that down, it's like it's less about saying no to the technology and it's more about how can we make our home, our workplace, our lives, how we like even physically structure it in a way that supports the things that really bring us alive, the things that are really good. And so with our kids, um, we want to make creativity as easy as possible. So on the
Mm-hmm.
main floor, we have a craft table with just like all kinds of stuff available for them to make. I would say we're a making family, and having that be a part of our day-to-day life automatically means that we spend less time on screens, or if we're using screens, we're using them to create. We're using them to support our creativity. So we're watching a tutorial or something like that to make something. So In terms of our family, some of the values or skills we're trying to teach them are empathy,
Mm-hmm.
generosity, and creativity. And part and another big thing is literacy, is media literacy. We're talking all the time, and I'm so grateful because my kids were keyed into this so early on. I remember my daughter seeing a magazine cover. She's like 5 years old, and she said to me, "Mommy, why are people working so hard to look pretty all the time?" Right?
Yeah.
But they're just seeing this stuff all the time. And so, we're not necessarily sitting and watching every program with them, but all of our tech is on the main floor. So we're all a part of it. We
Mm-hmm.
hear things, we can see, what they're doing. And I think that's an incredibly important thing for families. Um, but I'll pick up on something while I'm cooking dinner. My sons are watching a show. Um, and it's not shame based, but it's asking, what do you think, what did you think about that, or what message do you think they were trying to get across when they were doing
Mm-hmm.
that? And then when it comes to apps and games they want to play, we talk straight up about the hook modeling that happens in big tech. Like, do you see why they want you to play like this game every single day?
Yeah.
Because if you play every single day, you get 5 new gold coins. Do you
Mm-hmm.
see how that's a built-in addiction model? Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, right. And like my kids are like 7, 9, and 11. Like these are, youngish kids. Like these are conversations that they're able to have. And I think through them, we're building rational thinking. And in that we're also decreasing, that baseline anxiety because they are understanding what they're engaging with. And I think we're all engaging with tech in quite a mindful way.
Mm-hmm. And that's incredibly important. You, especially being mindful of the tech. You likened the screens and how we're spending a lot of time on there, and being mindful of that because it should be treated as a tool and
Yeah.
not as a lifestyle, almost so to say.
Yes.
Could you expand on that? There was one, I can't remember what it is. You wouldn't brush your teeth with a
With a
hammer or
screwdriver.
source. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tool. Use it like you would any other tool. Take it out for a specific purpose and then put it away. And a great hack for that is using your two hacks, using your laptop or your desktop computer as much as possible for all of your digital use
Mm-hmm.
instead of a portable, and also writing a list of
List
things to
writing.
get done.
Yeah.
Write a list of things to get done online and check it off. And when you're done, just move on, close
Mm-hmm.
it up and move on to other things. It's the infinite scroll, right? It's the endless email boxes. It's all those pulls, right? Work is literally never finished for anyone basically
Yeah.
these days. And
Oh yeah.
so it's building in these constraints to make it easier to use it as a tool, and not to use it in ways that we don't intend to use it.
Yeah. Do you have any practices you put into place to make you more mindful of your technology use? I remember when I was meditating a lot, I was a lot more receptive to when I picked up my phone, I would be more critical of that and be like, no, put it back down. Do you have anything that you do to promote not picking your phone up?
Yes. I actually have a beautiful cover from a Winnipeg-based company called Deconstruct.
Mm-hmm.
These are actual leaves,
What?
and this is actual leaves
No way.
imprinted in here. Yeah, and it's in resin, and I love that because I always place it face down. Although we do know that even the presence of a smartphone, decreases like engagement and conversation and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So hack, strategy number one, have it away
Yeah.
out of view, unless you need it. Having it face down. And for me, this just reminds me of nature. This reminds me of what's most important. So that's just like a little personal strategy I have. There's all the tips about, where you charge it, having it outside of the bedrooms. You can begin, and end your day prioritizing other things,
Mm-hmm.
reading, which also decreases anxiety and helps, your circadian rhythms and serves you in having better sleep. Um, Oh, there's so many. There's so many we could talk
Yeah.
about.
After reading your book, I started reanalyzing all my habits regarding my phone. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm just spending way too much time on here. And no one can see this, but past this desk, I've made that zone a no phone zone. So I don't even take my phone over
Oh,
there. Um, and I've been reading more, sleeping better. And another thing I did, I went for a walk the other night and I just left my phone at home.
yeah, that's such a good one.
Just leave it. You just totally remove it out of the situation. And it's so much obviously easier to engage with your surroundings. But one of the things that I did find when I went on this walk was that, I wasn't peeping in people's houses, but you just see them. And every time I saw a human inside their house, they were hunched over screens. There was a couple at a table and one was on their phone, one was on their laptop. And it was, oh my goodness, this is so real.
Mm-hmm.
And I think since the onset of COVID, I know I've been spending more time on a screen, and likely manifests and is very relevant to society as a whole. And if, we're heading for this global reset that a lot of people have been touting, and that reset entails sitting inside and looking at screens all day, I'm pretty concerned that we're experiencing a more drastic shift in this, even more pronounced than what we're already experiencing. And this is going to become a shifting baseline almost. So this is our new normal that everyone's talking about. And obviously that's really concerning, but what are your particular concerns for this, for society as a whole?
Yeah. So I remember at the beginning of COVID, I live in Toronto, like in Toronto
Mm-hmm.
proper. We live on the west side of the city. It's not right downtown, but it's city. And I remember at the beginning of COVID, just the creativity that came out of the woodwork in our community. I think
Mm-hmm.
this happened just about everywhere, signs on the doors, we can do this. And um, in our neighborhood, this is the Ministry of Silly Walks. You know what this is from? This is from, oh my goodness, the British comedy troupe Monty Python. It's a nod to Monty Python. So between this stake and this stake, you have to do a silly walk. And so these were like up around our neighborhood. So like we would just humor them. Like, what else we got to do? We're going out for like our daily walk during COVID. Like we may as well do a silly walk. And all of these super creative ways to engage the community. Notes in our mailbox from a neighbor with their phone number and their address saying, if you need groceries, if you need anything, these are our names. This is our contact information. Please do not hesitate to reach out. Things that I'd never, ever seen before in my community, ever.
So you're seeing awesome human
Awesome
engagement.
human engagement.
Awesome.
And and I'm holding onto a sliver of hope still, but I was so hopeful. I was so excited, like in terms of that reset,
Mm-hmm.
um, in terms of community and looking out for one another and seeing one another and not being individualistic and not being obsessed with hustle and work. And all of a sudden, like it seemed like the blinders came off and people were seeing their communities in entirely new ways. You're just sitting, working from home and like seeing your neighbors that you don't normally see, walk down the street at the same time every day. Um, so there's two resets, right? There's like the hopeful reset and then there's like the scary reset. I don't know if you want me to talk about both. Like that's what
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing.
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually started writing this new book at the very beginning of COVID because I had these threads that I had been learning about attention and effort, and that love is effortful, and that we need to be attentive, and effort needs to be present and engaging in love, like love and action. And so these, I was so excited and got to work. And but I don't know if this is what you've experienced, listeners, watchers, or yourself, Mitch, but I have noticed that that's kind of gone away. We have found our new normal, and our new normal is, work has kind of just, we have figured out how to work from home, and we've figured out how to have our groceries delivered, and we've figured out how to do, our healthcare online with virtual appointments and all these different things. We sort of have figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And that concerns me, particularly because there are some people that are saying that the shift online has basically sped up by about a decade because of COVID.
No way.
Oh yeah, like the adoption rate that we were going at has been sped up by 10 years. And so
Oh, wow.
I do believe that there is sort of a point of no return that we've hit in terms of a shift to remote work. For many, this is a positive shift. And I want to acknowledge that because it allows for a lot of people it allows a lot of people increased family time and also community engagement, because that hour on either side of their workday in, gridlock in their car isn't there anymore. And so I want to acknowledge that that's something to be celebrated and good. But I do think that we can and we must reclaim offline spaces as soon as we can. Like,
Yeah.
we know that not all activities benefit from an online format, even if we like want to tell ourselves so much. So like, I love doing this conversation with you, but I think it would be better if we were all in a room together.
It is quite ironic that we were having this.
Right? I
Yeah.
know. And I think that, so one of the things I would say is I think we need to, as fast as possible, reclaim offline spaces as soon as it's safe to do it, because, there are going to be those who force the digital model for, community building and work and education, which a lot of which ultimately serve, capitalist ends, because there's cost savings, like huge cost savings, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
People not in person means tons of money saved, not necessarily to the benefit of all people. And so I really believe that to serve our mental, spiritual, and physical health, we are going to have to actively reclaim the real world. I talk about this all the time, but the online world offers ease and efficiency. It also offers a masterful place to hide our true selves. And I often say that the reason that we like being online so much is that because it's a controlled environment, which I alluded to before with Instagram.
Yeah.
But the world and humans are intrinsically unpredictable. It's such a wild card out there.
Oh, it's pure chaos.
It's pure chaos. And so it takes so much courage to choose them, to choose to be out there with like these weird people and like all of these like potential, things that could go wrong or don't go the way that we planned. But engagement, I believe that engagement with them is the only path to real lasting meaning and well-being. I believe that we are embodied beings for a reason. I am not with the trends, humanists who believe that we would all be better if we were just like, in some vat with just our brains.
Yeah, no thanks.
Our bodies, like, no, like I believe that we're embodied for a reason, and that the truest version of ourselves and the best version of our world, involves being in the world. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, you highlighted 3 keys to cultivating a meaningful existence in the 21st century in your book. And I'm wondering if you could share that with the audience.
Sure. So the 3 keys, which Mitch helpfully reminded me of, because it's been a while since I've read this book and my thinking has expanded, but these pieces are still really core to what I believe. 3 keys to thriving in a digital world. First is admitting weakness. So when we confess our needs, and we're able to come closer to one another. So we all know like the perfect person, or who we think might be like a perfect person, and we don't feel super comfortable around that person, or that family that has like the most perfect house and nothing is out of order.
Yeah.
We don't feel very comfortable in that environment. And so I really believe that it's by admitting weakness that we have a hope of being known and come closer, and have a hope of coming closer to one another. The second is renunciation. It's a big word. Basically, it's like saying no to one thing and yes to another thing. So in letting our yeses be yes and our nos be no, we form commitments. So no, I'm not going to do that thing, but yes, I am going to do this thing, and I'm going to commit to it. And in those limits, we find our meaning and joy. So I recently talked on Instagram, a little ironically, about committing to 3 people.
Just 3 people?
Committing to
on
3,
Instagram?
No, not on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Committing to 3 people in your life that you're going to prioritize building your relationship with.
Okay.
That's a commitment. You're renouncing other things. It's not that you don't love other people, but you're saying, I'm going to commit to these 3 people. I'm going to commit to regularly engaging with them and building a deeper relationship with them. So that's what I mean by renunciation. And that's the whole idea with JOMO and FOMO, right? The fear of missing out is, it feeds us the lie that we can do all the things, that we can and we should, but it's actually impossible.
It
And
is.
JOMO is the joy of missing out, right? On the right things. It's a joy of missing out, knowing that we are not superhuman. We are human. And that we have to say no to some things and yes to other things. So that's the second.
Yeah. And it's totally okay to just hang out and read a book, put your phone down.
Yes.
You'll feel better for it. And then you'll be able to live your life a more fulfilling manner.
100%. And then the third is that we must be known. And I mean, these are all connected to one another, obviously, but we matter most to the people in our lives who truly know us.
Yeah.
And we're not going to discover who we are in a solitary state, but we find it in mutual dependency, and belonging.
Yeah.
And so I think I know in my own life, like, not to just like talk in hypotheticals or, big philosophical concepts, like in my real life, like removing obstacles to relationship is incredibly important. Removing obstacles to deepening my relationship with my husband and with my kids, removing obstacles to calling my mentally disabled uncle in Vancouver on a regular basis and not letting other things get in the way of that. Removing the things that are, or, removing obstacles in ourselves, to relationships. So whether it's shame or it's, trying to reach for perfection or whatever it might be. Removing those obstacles to relationships. So these are big, heady ideas. I wish they were just turn off your phone at 7 p.m.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. And I think those things help, but really I'm interested in a conversation about what it means to be human in a digital age. And I think that it's these bigger movements of connecting to others and connecting to ourselves that are really going to help us navigate technology for the long haul, a sustainable approach to technology.
Yes. And be known. It's like, it's so much, just be present. And again, it's ironic that to, in some ways, embrace relationship, you are going to be using your phone.
Yeah.
And that's not, it's a,
especially
use
right
the
now.
tool appropriately, it's
Right.
just, if you need to make a FaceTime call across the country, pick up your phone, make that call, put your phone down.
And if it's really, really hard for you to not go on Instagram, then just delete it off your phone.
I do that quite often. And it's so, once it's off there, it's just, oh, cool.
Yeah, it's not
easy.
There. Yep. It is so much easier. Those are those environmental changes are huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, and touching on that, we didn't get a chance to talk about this in our earlier conversation today, but you have 4 steps for beginning a detox. I've got them written down if you don't have them, but I'm wondering if you could, if you could go through your easy steps to initializing a detox, that would be, that'd be great.
So digital detoxing. So get a good why. I'm just going to read them out first and then I'll talk about them. 1 is get a good why. 2 is start easy. 3 is break it down. And 4 is be gentle with yourself. So 1 is get a good why. What do you need to know what you want? You need to know what the end game is. If you don't have a vision for what you want life to look like, you're never going to make the changes. You're never going to be able to sustain the changes that you say you want. So really, why do I want to decrease my digital intake or use it in a better way? Write it down. Why do you want this? Okay. Number 2, start easy. So baby steps. Write it. So I already shared one of them. Write a list of things to do. Write a list of things to get done online, right? Great baby step. Another baby step, charge your phone outside of the bedroom. Great baby step. Um, we already talked about all of these. Set up a standing walking date and leave your phone behind.
Mm-hmm.
Baby step. When you break things down in achievable pieces, you gain confidence and hope
Yeah.
that you can keep doing it. So you give yourself the gift of a momentum, right? You start having momentum and you're like, I can do this. So just start small. Start with one thing today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Break it down. Honestly, I'm going to just plug one of the things that I offer in my work, which is honestly, there's no better way to break it down than joining my digital well-being membership Navigate, which is brand new. Because over the first 4 months, I systematically help you realign your tech use with your values and goals. And it really takes time. Like you can't, it's a process. It's understanding the media environment you're in, how it's working against you, the ways in which it is working for you, and then understanding what you really value and the goals that you have for yourself, and then
That's awesome.
using tech in a way that aligns with those values and goals.
That's awesome because it's such a core tenet of permaculture as well, is establishing your goals, your visions, and your values, and using what's around you in a productive manner to grow food. So there's so much
I love that.
interplay.
Did not know that. That's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, this would be a great time to actually just give out the promo code
Yeah.
for your book. It is, oh geez, where'd it go? It is Ideas on Missing Out. So capital I, ideas, capital O on, capital M missing, capital O out. All one word. Use that to purchase Christina Crook's The Joy of Missing Out book.
And then
And
do you want number 4? Do you want the
yes,
last one?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
then and then the fourth one is speak to the known. And we already talked about this before, but how many times a day do we speak to the unknown? Like
Mhm.
some large group of people that some of which we know, many of which we do not know. Every time we publicly post anything on the internet, we might know a handful of people who will likely read it, but nothing is guaranteed because of the algorithm,
Those algos.
those algos. So the smaller and more direct the audience, the freer you can be to speak, to really
Yeah.
speak to your intended audience. And so that audience might be one person. Like you might be thinking, I just took a beautiful photo and I could post it, but maybe you might just choose to share it with one person,
Mm-hmm.
a family member or a friend, speaking to the known, sharing things as directly as possible with others. So those are my 4.
Cool.
Mhm.
It recently, actually, I'm not sure how recent it was, but you had a conversation with Lindsay Coulter,
Yes.
the Green Queen, and you guys talked a lot about vitamin N. And I'm
Mm.
wondering if you might be able to distill some of the insightful things that she was saying.
Yeah. So Lindsay Coulter, the Queen of Green, such a wonderful, wonderful woman in the greater Victoria area. And I'm just going back into some of my notes because we talked a lot. I wanted to talk to Lindsay because it was the middle of COVID and not the middle. Who knows if we're in the middle? Whatever. A few months into
Yeah.
COVID. And I wanted to offer to people something that was free because everyone's incomes are all over the place. I didn't want people to have to pay a penny to access it. And I wanted something that everyone had access to. And that is nature.
Yeah.
Is nature. Everyone, regardless of whether you live in a huge city like I do, or you live way out on a farm, so you have access to nature. And so that's why I wanted to talk with Lindsay. And she's got so many beautiful strategies for being in nature and connecting to nature. One of the things she shared was bringing nature inside. So having a growing thing, present in your environment has all kinds of benefits to focus,
Mm-hmm.
to just a general sense of well-being. Even better, tending to something outdoors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Growing something, being attentive to that. Obviously, that it's good for the earth. It is also good for your mindfulness practice. There's a mindful aspect to that. So that's something that we talked about. I also think, I'm not sure if I shared this with her, but I wanted to share this piece about nature that I think came out directly out of my conversation with her, which was, you know, I don't know if you talk about this in your organization, but this idea of rewilding or being,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And so kind of like grounding and rewilding. And I had this experience this summer. We live on, in Toronto on Lake Ontario. It's a huge lake. It looks like an ocean. We went down to the beach and we safely, socially distanced and went out on these huge, huge rocks to climb on them with my kids. And I don't always go out and do stuff like this with them, but I was like, no, I'm going to do this. This looks fun. Looks joyful. And so I get on these rocks and like, I'm really nervous to jump from the first rock to the next. I was like, why am I so afraid of this? I know I'm pretty strong in my body. I used to be an athlete, these things. And I realized I was so out of practice because I'm always indoors on flat surfaces. I'm always walking on sidewalks. And I challenged myself to jump to the next rock on the next rock. And I could tell even by like the 12th massive rock that I was beginning to trust myself. And I was beginning to, like there's something in my internal balance that started to reset. And I realized that I took that experience away and thought about it so many times because there was this element of just trusting myself and my body that I don't have when I'm out of nature. And so nature, yeah, there's just so much with nature. It's free, it's available. Walking, in the woods. Forest Fridays has been an important practice for our family. And even if we don't do it every Friday, it's just there in the calendar. We definitely get into the forest at least once a week for a walk. And it is one of the best things that we do as a family every single week.
Every Friday.
Yeah, it's in the calendar as Forest Fridays because I'm weird about like things that start with the same letter.
Oh yeah.
It like makes it really easy to remember. Like Forest Fridays, I've got to do that. It might happen on Saturday. It doesn't matter, but it's there. It's a standing commitment in the calendar to be in nature. And just, I mean, you could probably speak much more than I could to the benefits of nature connection, but especially right now where we're all living and working online, so incredibly important to be in the real wild world.
Yeah. It's interesting because we have this. I don't know if it's a downloaded preconception that we are not in nature, but I'm in nature right now. I am nature, and we have recently just been separating ourselves from nature. And there's I forget the author of the essay, but it's called "The Trouble with Wilderness," and it's a really good essay, and it's all about how wilderness is actually a troubling word because it's separating us from where we're from, and that has so many societal implications because we see ourselves as otherworldly,
right?
And that is, and the tech that we're consuming at such a exponentially increasing rate is so integral to that, and we're just being hardwired to look into these things to get our quick dopamine fix when a much more wholesome, righteous, fulfilling one is right in front of us. And it's just going outside and being part of the environment, which is so integral for our future.
Yeah.
And that's integral to permaculture. That's what it is. It's just bringing back to those base principles and growing food and growing community and having fun while doing it.
We grew some things this summer.
What'd you grow?
We grew cucumbers and carrots. The cucumbers worked. The carrots were like this big. We still ate them. I don't know. It was like in a planter box. It was a raised planter bed. We must have done something wrong. The light isn't the best there, but it felt important for us to begin to learn how to do that in our home environment. So
yeah, and it's such an important skill just to know. Absolutely. Well, we've got some questions, and let's scroll up here. I've got a little question fairy in the YouTube chat who's pumping them out.
Question fairy.
Yes, question fairy Ben. What is the most toxic social media app in your opinion?
You want me to rank it? Okay. It depends on your personality. I think it really depends on your disposition. Um, I don't know if this person's asking if the most toxic for society or the most toxic for an individual. Um, Twitter is notoriously toxic for trolling.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Facebook is notorious for disinformation. And Instagram is notorious for lowering levels of self esteem. Um, they're all harmful in their own way. They all also are beneficial in their own way. So, um, I hope that's kind of answering your question. It's a big question.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Depends
That
on
makes
which, yeah.
that's another thing in permaculture as well. It's just, it depends.
Yeah, people love that. It
Yeah.
depends.
Yeah, it
It's a
always depends.
non-answer. Um, yeah, again, like a huge part of the work that I do in coaching people in how to navigate technology in a healthy and sustainable way is around values and what
Hmm.
you value. And if you value beauty and you follow accounts that inspire, you know, a love of beauty and inspires you to create and make, then that is a beautiful use that aligns with your values. That you're using that tool, right? You're using that platform
Yeah.
as a tool. Um,
It's aligning with your values and your visions.
exactly. And with Twitter, like I joined Twitter after my book was released because I was urged by a mentor of mine to be present there, to be a part of, a public conversation. And so it was a really intentional choice. Still not my favorite place to be. I think I'm pretty
Hmm.
bad. I'm pretty bad at Twitter. I don't think I'm like pithy enough, and I'm not. Um, I don't like stirring up controversy. It seems like if you're able to stir up controversy, then you do pretty well on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do like being present there because I learn a lot. I actually use Twitter in a very intentional way as basically a Rolodex. I follow all the most interesting, important people in the space that I occupy, which is technology, um, and mindfulness and whatever, that the whole technology conversation. I follow all
Hmm.
the people that I think are really important to hear from there. And that's who I listen to, and that's where I engage. So, yeah, these are big questions, important
Yeah.
questions.
Janelle asks, or says rather, I am worried about device usage in the face of peer pressure for kids.
Hmm.
I am not there yet, but I see it coming. I would appreciate any advice from Christina.
Okay. Janelle, I have a daughter who's 11. She doesn't have a phone. She probably won't have a phone for a really long time. The reasoning for that is we believe that she can grow, um, to trust herself to make her way in the world without that, what I would call a false sense of security. I need to have my phone so I can call my
Hmm.
parents or be safe. We all, for most of history, we have been in the world without them. I would say if you're concerned about it, start with a phone that has very little capability. So there's I would reach for it, but I would have to leave the microphone. An amazing phone called the Light Phone. It's actually built by, first and foremostly, an artist and a designer named Joe Hollier and his co-founder. And they have built a phone that's designed to be used as little as possible, which I just love. And there are these simple, effective phones that don't take over. And so if you are looking to get a starter like that, they're actually quite well priced to get started on that. And then, yeah, I think talk to your friends. Like, I don't know how old you are, but talk to your friends about when they want to get one and why they want to get one, and even about how you guys want to use them together. Because I've heard from teenagers that will say, you know, if I don't have a phone, I don't get invited to meet up with my friends for lunch because they coordinate by text.
Hmm.
Like, you're in high school, you see each other like all the time. Like
Yeah.
every 10 minutes, you're seeing your friends. You guys could just coordinate by talking, but you guys get to decide, as a community, how you want to do that. And so, Yeah, again, I wish I had a more straightforward answer for you, but I think finding a way to prioritize the things you already love, the people you already love, and choosing a tech product that's going to support that.
Cool. That's really good information. I'm going to look into that light phone.
I did a podcast interview with them. They're wonderful, out of Brooklyn.
Cool. And where can people listen to your podcast if they want to know more?
Okay, so the podcast is called the JOMO Cast, and it is available everywhere. It's on Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify, it's in all the places, the usual places.
All the local suspects.
Yeah, and then
usuals.
if you want to find more information, it's just jomocast.com.
Yeah, cool. Well, since your 11-year-old doesn't have a phone, I'm assuming neither does your 9 or 7-year-old.
Nope. They have to share all the digital products, and it's such a good lesson.
Yeah.
We have a family iPad. They have to take turns. We have one television in the public, main floor of our house. They have to take turns. I think there's such good lessons to be learned from, having one and sharing and also engaging in each other's media. We used to not be able to entertain ourselves alone, and now we can. And so our media consumption, even with, spouses or partners, can be isolating. We can do it alone instead of doing it together. And so, I think limiting the number of devices in the house also allows for creative opportunities to engage with each other's interests.
Well, you've had quite the head start on having these protocols set in place, but in another hypothetical world, say you allowed your children to have their phones, and after a while you start to realize, oh, this is not good. My child is spending hours on their phone. What might you do to change that behavior?
So there's an amazing woman out of Vancouver. Her name is Dr. Alexandra Samuel, and she has done a massive study on kids and teens, specifically in technology and parenting. And she's found that basically families fall into 3 camps. There are the technophobes, which, as you might imagine, limit technology severely. There are the technophiles, which, receive all new tech with open arms. They're early adopters, and they have no limits on their kids' screen time. And then there is this sweet spot in the middle, which is being your kids' tech teachers. And so I would say to the person that has, if it was me and I had been that technophile parent, I had opened it too wide and was seeing negative consequences, I would first look at my own practices around tech, because you can't preach what you don't model. You have to model good tech habits. So I would say you need to look at your own habits first. If you have your phone and you're looking at it at the dinner table, you should expect that your child or your teen is doing the same. If you are binge watching Netflix for 4 hours every night, you should expect your kid to do the same.
Yeah. Monkey see, monkey do.
Monkey see, monkey do. So it's really your own habits. And then I would have a conversation with my teen about what they really like to do. What are their interests beyond their phone, even if it's just one thing, and prioritizing that. I remember talking to a mother of 10 children. She gave me some unsolicited advice, but it was the most amazing advice. And she said to me, my kids were a bit younger, and she said, your kids are going to come to an age where their friendships are going to become incredibly important, because it's going to dictate how they spend their time. And she said, if your kid has found a friend where their relationship is very creative, that they make together, that they're very creative together, prioritize that friendship like it was like a paid program. So, like parents would never skip a piano lesson that they're paying a bunch of money for. Prioritize that friendship like it was a paid
Yeah.
Put it on the calendar and invest and get your kids engaged with that person, because
You're going on this play date.
going on this play date, whether you like it or not. No, they're going to like it because it's going to be like their favorite person.
Yeah.
But to prioritize that. And I thought that was so wise, because that comes back to this philosophy around it's less about limiting technology as it is about creating the positive conditions where other engagements can thrive and flourish. And if you build your life around the things that are truly life-giving, then you're going to want more of it. It's not going to be about detoxing. It's not going to be about taking something away. It's going to be like, what is the good I can put in this window? So it's not like I'm taking an hour of tech away from you. It's like, what are we going to put in that hour? So you have a love of X. Well, let's prioritize that thing.
Yeah.
And build our life in a more holistic way. And I think that's really the most healthy way that you can begin to shift the balance, because we know what it's like. It's like being on a diet. If you're just restricting things, it doesn't feel good, and the gains are not going to be long term. And so I think that's why I love this conversation about joy, is like prioritizing joy. And the beautiful thing, and I won't go on and on, I just will say this one last thing, that I looked at the dictionary definition of the word joy about 3 years after my book was published, which New Society actually helped name, which I'm grateful for every single day. And if you're watching, team, go team. But written into the definition of joy are the words well-being and success. Okay. They're the things that everybody wants. Success is achievement of goals, whatever they are. And well-being is, well, it's to be well. And so I think centering the conversation around joy is so powerful when it comes to technology, because everybody wants joy. Everyone wants to feel good, to have meaning. I feel like joy is just like happiness is, like this much joy, but like joy is like this full experience of like what it means to be human and doing the things we were meant to do. And I think if we can center our lives more and more around those things, nature, relationship, creative work, then we have a hope of keeping technology in balance.
Amazing. That's and there's so many principles aligning with permaculture as well, especially obviously the nature bit, but the well-being factor. Like the whole main tenet of permaculture is to promote well-being of your own personal health, and then by extension, the planet. And I guess for any viewers watching who are interested in more, head over to vergepermaculture.ca. We're actually hosting a permaculture design course. Registrations close in 3 days. And there you will learn how to bring joy to the planet through the act of growing food and being a steward of the land.
Awesome.
We got one more question. You have time for one more question?
Yeah.
It's very in line with what you were talking about earlier. But Embrace Every Day asks, how do we encourage family members to join in on cutting back, especially if they're more reluctant to do so, but you can see those damaging things happening and you obviously care about this person. So what can you do?
I would say two things. I would say be honest about how it's impacting you. Be vulnerable. About the way it's affecting you and maybe the ways that you see it affecting them. And then I would say, like, focus on, again, it's always coming back to the same things. Focus on the things that you could do together to fill that space. What are the ways that, even as a baby step, engaging in that technology experience with them can be quite surprising and connecting. And then taking it beyond that into things that are offline and are enjoyable for both of you or all of you, and making it as easy as possible to do those things on a regular basis. So, whether it's putting the board games out Saturday morning so you prioritize playing them together, or, scheduling in some sort of activity outside of the house. People will say, because I do actually encourage people to have a day or at least half a day offline every week. And for some people, that's really, really scary. But if you start to think about what you can put in that space, it becomes a lot more achievable and exciting. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. I think that wraps it up for today. Before we go, we got to congratulate one viewer. Janelle Cito is the winner of the book.
Yay, Janelle.
Thanks, Janelle. Woo! Christina, thank you so much for joining me today. If anyone wants more information on Christina, just go to christinacrook.com and get in on that JOMO podcast and learn how to spread more joy.
You got it. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll see you in the future, and have fun till then.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.